My sister has always loved telling me what I'd never have. Never be successful enough. Never be pretty enough. Never be chosen. So when she laughed across our parents' dining table and said, "You'll never find anyone who actually wants you," it didn't shock anyone. Not even me. What shocked me was how casually she said it, like she was commenting on the weather, like it was a fact everyone had already agreed on. I remember the exact moment, the clink of her fork against her plate, the way my mother didn't look up, the way my father cleared his throat and pretended to be interested in his phone. I smiled, the polite, practiced smile I'd perfected over years of surviving family dinners. "Maybe," I said softly. My sister rolled her eyes. "Please, you're almost 35. No career worth mentioning, no serious relationship, no spark." She gestured vaguely at me. "Men don't go for this." This. I looked down at myself. Simple dress, minimal makeup, hair pulled back. Comfortable. Invisible. She leaned back in her chair, smug. "Some of us are just meant to be alone." Everyone laughed. Lightly. Uncomfortably. Enough to let her words land without consequence. What none of them knew was that I'd already found someone. And what my sister definitely didn't know was that the man she'd been desperately trying to impress for the past 6 months was already my husband. She just didn't know his name, or what he looked like, or that he existed at all, because I had learned a long time ago that my life was safer when my family didn't know anything about it. Growing up, my sister Ava had been the golden one, loud, confident, beautiful in a way that demanded attention. Teachers loved her, boys adored her. My parents rearranged their lives around her potential. I was the quiet one, the background, the easy child. Easy meant overlooked. When Ava won awards, I clapped. When she failed, I was told not to outshine her. When she spoke, people listened. When I spoke, people waited for her to interrupt. It wasn't cruelty in the obvious way. It was erosion. Constant, subtle erosion. By the time we were adults, it felt normal. Ava worked in business development. She bounced from company to company, always convinced the next opportunity would be the one that finally recognized her brilliance. Recently, she'd been obsessing over a potential client, a private firm. Very exclusive, very powerful. She talked about it nonstop. "The CEO is impossible to get a meeting with," she complained one afternoon over coffee. "No social media, no public appearances. Everything goes through layers of assistance." My mother leaned in. "But if anyone can do it, it's you." Ava smiled, preening. "Exactly." I stirred my coffee and said nothing. Because I knew exactly how hard he was to reach. Because I shared a bed with him. I met Daniel 3 years ago at a bookstore. Not a networking event, not a party, not through friends. A bookstore. I was reaching for a book on the top shelf when a stranger gently said, "Careful, that one's heavier than it looks." He smiled like he meant it, warm, unassuming. No arrogance, no performance. We talked for 20 minutes about nothing important and everything real. He asked what I liked, not what I did. I told him the truth. We started dating quietly, slowly. He never pushed, never rushed, never treated me like something to acquire. On our 3rd date, he told me what he did. "I run a company," he said, almost apologetically. I laughed. So do half the men on dating apps, usually from their parents' basements. He smiled. Fair. He didn't say CEO. He didn't name the company. He didn't flex. Later, when I found out the scale of it, I understood why. Daniel didn't lead with power. He led with presence. We got married last year. Small ceremony, no family drama, no spectacle. Just us and a few friends who actually knew me. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell Ava. Not because I was ashamed, Because I was tired of my life becoming a competition I never agreed to enter. Daniel supported that choice completely. Your life, he said. Your rules. So when Ava started pitching to his firm, neither of us said a word. At first, it was almost amusing. She practiced her presentations in my parents' living room, pacing like a motivational speaker. They need me, she said confidently. Their brand positioning is outdated. If this CEO had half a brain, he'd jump at my proposal. Daniel sat beside me on the couch one evening while she ranted, his arm resting lightly around my shoulders. He said nothing, just listened. Later that night, he asked quietly, "Does she always talk like that about people she's trying to impress?" "Yes," I replied, "especially when she doesn't know who they are." He shook his head, amused. "She's confident. That's one word for it." The truth was, Ava had no idea who she was pitching to. Daniel never used his full name professionally. The company was structured to keep him out of the spotlight. It protected his privacy. It also filtered out people who were more interested in ego than substance. Asa had made it through the first round purely on credentials. The next round would involve a direct meeting. She was thrilled. "They want a video call," she announced at dinner one night. "Me and the CEO, just us." My father whistled. "That's big." My mother smiled proudly. "See, this is what ambition looks like." Ava glanced at me. "You should take notes." I smiled again, that same practiced smile. "I'm happy for you," I said. She smirked. "Maybe watching me succeed will motivate you." Daniel squeezed my hand under the table. I said nothing. The night before Ava's big pitch, Daniel received the proposal packet. He skimmed it quietly while I cooked dinner. "She's good at selling herself," he said. "She always has been," I replied. He hesitated. "But she doesn't listen." I laughed softly. "That's been her biggest weakness since birth." He looked at me then. Really looked at me. "Are you sure you're okay with this?" he asked. "I can step aside, have someone else handle it." I shook my head. "No, let it play out." He searched my face. "You don't owe her anything." "I know," I said. "This isn't about her. It was about me, about all the years I'd been told I was less, that I'd never be chosen, that no one would ever see me as worth staying for. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to humiliate her. I just needed the truth to exist in the same room as her arrogance." The next day, Ava dressed like she was going to war. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, power suit. She stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her blazer. "This is it," she said. "Once I land this account, everything changes." "For you," my mother said proudly. Ava smiled at her reflection, then glanced at me. "Try not to look so sad today," she said. "People can smell envy." I met her eyes in the mirror. "I'm not sad," I said quietly. She laughed. "Sure." She left in a rush of confidence and perfume. I stayed behind, calm, because I knew something she didn't. The man she believed would finally validate her worth already came home to me every night. And by the end of that call, everything she thought she knew about me, about herself, and about who really held power in that room was about to collapse. But that would come later. Because first, she had to say it again. The thing she'd been saying my whole life. "You'll never find anyone." And this time, someone very important was going to hear her say it. The day of the pitch arrived wrapped in ceremony. Ava treated it like a coronation. She woke up early, posted an inspirational quote on LinkedIn about visionaries who dare, and sent a voice note to our family group chat reminding everyone to wish her luck. My mother responded with heart emojis. My father sent a thumbs up. I sent nothing. Not because I wasn't supportive, but because I had learned that silence unsettled Ava more than opposition ever could. By noon, she was pacing the living room of my parents' house, laptop open, notes spread out across the coffee table like sacred texts. She practiced her opening line again and again, adjusting her tone, smiling at herself after each attempt. "This part is where I establish dominance," she said aloud, not to anyone in particular. "CEOs like confidence." Daniel had already left for the office, or rather, his office, the top floor of a building Ava had only ever seen in stock photos attached to pitch decks. He'd kissed my forehead before leaving, calm as always. "See you tonight," I replied. He smiled. "To both of us." The video call was scheduled at 2 o'clock. At 1:45, Ava shooed everyone out of the room. "I need focus," she snapped. "This isn't a family picnic." My parents retreated obediently. I followed them to the kitchen, where my mother immediately began wringing her hands. "I just know she's going to nail it," she said. "This could change her life." I poured myself a glass of water. "Maybe." My mother glanced at me. "You could sound a little more excited." I met her gaze evenly. "I am excited, for the truth." She frowned. "What does that mean?" "Nothing," I said lightly. "Just nothing." At exactly 2 o'clock, Ava clicked the link. I didn't see the call. I didn't need to. I could imagine it perfectly. The way she'd sit up straighter when the screen connected, the way she'd tilt her head slightly, pretending to listen while already planning her next interruption, the way she'd smile like she was granting a favor by being there. Daniel told me later how it started. He joined the call with his camera off, as he always did for initial meetings, not as a power move, but as a filter. He liked to listen before being seen. Ava didn't like that. She launched into her pitch with practiced ease, her voice smooth and confident. She spoke about market positioning, brand narrative, audience capture. She spoke quickly, leaving no space for questions. When Daniel tried to interject, she talked over him. "I'll get to that," she said briskly. "If you let me finish, you'll understand." He let her finish. For 45 minutes. She ended with a flourish. "So," she said, smiling broadly, "I think it's obvious why this partnership would be mutually beneficial." There was a pause. Then Daniel spoke. "Thank you for the presentation," he said calmly. "I have a few questions." Ava leaned back, satisfied. "Of course." He asked about long-term strategy. She deflected. He asked about team structure. She exaggerated. He asked about scalability. She dodged. Finally, he asked something she wasn't prepared for. "Who are you designing this for?" he asked. She blinked. "The company, obviously." "No," he said gently. "Who specifically?" She frowned. "Your customers." "Which ones?" Another pause. She laughed, a little sharp. "You're overthinking it." That was the moment Daniel knew. He ended the call politely. "We'll be in touch," he said. Ava logged off beaming. She burst into the kitchen like a victorious general. "That went incredibly well," she announced. "He's tough, but I could tell he was impressed." My parents applauded. I took a sip of water. "Did he turn his camera on?" my mother asked. Ava waved her hand dismissively. "No, he's probably old or insecure." I smiled into my glass. The next 3 days were torture for Ava. She refreshed her email obsessively, checked her phone every minute, replayed the call in her head, revising it into something even more flattering. On the 4th day, she received an email. She opened it in front of everyone. Her smile froze. "They're requesting a follow-up?" she said slowly. "An in-person meeting." My father beamed. "That's fantastic." Ava nodded, but something in her eyes shifted. "It says the CEO will be present." My mother gasped. "Oh my God." Ava laughed nervously. "Guess I made an impression." She looked at me, suddenly sharp. "You're awfully quiet." I met her gaze. "Am I?" "Yes," she snapped. "It's like you're waiting for something." I shrugged. Maybe I am. The meeting was scheduled for the following week, at the company's headquarters. Ava spent the next 7 days spiraling between confidence and paranoia. She bought a new outfit, then another, then another. She rehearsed answers to questions no one had asked yet. "This is it," she kept saying. "This is where I prove myself." To me, she said, "You should come just to see what a real career looks like." I smiled. "I'll be there." She smirked. "As moral support?" "As family," I replied. The morning of the meeting, we arrived separately. Ava strutted into the lobby like she owned it. She barely noticed the space. Marble floors, minimalist art, the quiet hum of power that didn't need to announce itself. I noticed everything. Daniel was already upstairs. The receptionist checked Ava in, then glanced at me. "And you are?" "I'm with her," Ava said dismissively. "My sister." The receptionist smiled politely. "Of course, you're expected." Ava froze. "I am?" "Yes," the receptionist said. "The CEO asked that you both be present." Ava shot me a look. "Did you?" "I didn't do anything," I said honestly. We were escorted to the executive floor. Ava's heels clicked loudly against the polished floor. Her confidence wavered with every step. The conference room doors were closed. Ava straightened her blazer, took a deep breath. "Watch and learn," she whispered to me. The doors opened. Daniel stood at the head of the table. No suit jacket, just a crisp shirt, sleeves rolled up. Calm, grounded, familiar. Ava's face drained of color. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "You," she whispered. Daniel smiled. Not smugly, kindly. "Hello, Ava. I'm glad you could make it." She turned to me slowly, disbelief etched into every line of her face. "You know him?" I met her eyes. "Yes," I said. "I do." Her laugh came out brittle. "Of course you do. Everyone knows everyone." Daniel stepped closer. "Actually," he said gently, "there's something you should know." Ava looked between us, her confidence unraveling thread by thread. "This," Daniel said, placing a hand on my back, "is my wife." The room went silent. Ava stared at me like I had just spoken a foreign language. "You're what?" she croaked. I smiled, the same calm smile I'd worn at every family dinner, every insult, every dismissal. "Hi, Ava," I said. "Nice to finally meet you at work." Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. My sister, the woman who had spent her entire life telling me I was nothing, was suddenly faced with the truth she couldn't talk her way around. And for the first time ever, she was the one without words. But the real reckoning, that hadn't even started yet. The silence in that conference room didn't break all at once. It cracked, slowly, unevenly, like ice that had looked solid right up until the moment it gave way beneath your feet. Ava was still staring at me, her eyes wide, searching my face for the punchline she was sure had to be coming. "This isn't funny," she said, forcing out a laugh that sounded wrong even to her own ears. "You always do this. You love embarrassing me." Daniel didn't move his hand from my back. "This isn't a joke, and this isn't about embarrassing you." Ava turned to him sharply. "You don't know her like I do." I felt something old stir in my chest, that familiar urge to shrink, to let her define me before I could speak, but I didn't step back. Daniel looked at her steadily. "I know her as my partner, my equal, the person I trust most." Ava shook her head. "No, that's not, she doesn't." She looked at me again, panic bleeding through the cracks. "You don't even have a real job." I smiled gently. "You never asked." The executives around the table shifted uncomfortably. They hadn't expected family drama. They'd expected numbers, projections, clean professionalism. But Daniel didn't stop it. He wanted them to see this. He pulled out a chair and sat. "Let's reset," he said. "This meeting isn't about a pitch anymore."
Ava's voice rose. "Then what is it about?" "Clarity," he replied. He gestured for Ava to sit. She hesitated, then dropped into a chair, her posture rigid, her confidence leaking out of her in visible waves. Daniel turned to the room. "Before we discuss whether there's a future partnership here, there's something relevant you should all understand." My heart beat steadily. Not fast, not panicked. Ready. "My wife," Daniel continued, "consulted on our internal restructuring last year." Ava's head snapped up. "What?" "She identified inefficiencies we'd been overlooking for years. She helped design the operational framework you've been pitching back to us." Ava's mouth fell open. "That's impossible," she said. "She's unemployed?" I finished softly. She swallowed hard. "I work privately," I continued. "Strategic consulting. I don't advertise. I don't pitch. I don't chase." Daniel smiled slightly. "People come to her." Ava looked around the table, desperate for someone to contradict this. No one did. One of the executives nodded. "Her recommendations saved us 7 figures last quarter." Another added, "and reduced staff burnout by almost 40%. Ava's hands curled into fists. "Why wouldn't you tell me?" she demanded, turning on me. "Why would you let me walk in here like this?" I held her gaze. "You never wanted to know who I was. You wanted me to stay who you decided I was." She laughed sharply. "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" I asked. "When was the last time you asked me anything about my life without turning it into a comparison?" She opened her mouth. Closed it. Daniel stood. "Ava, this meeting will end now." She jolted. "Wait, what? You can't." "I can," he said evenly, "and I am." She stood too, desperation replacing arrogance. "This is personal. This isn't professional." Daniel's expression hardened just enough to be unmistakable. "You made it personal the moment you dismissed someone without understanding their value." She turned back to me, her voice dropping. "You did this on purpose." I shook my head. "No, I just stopped hiding." The meeting ended without another word. In the elevator ride down, Ava didn't speak. Neither did I, but I could feel her anger radiating off her, hot and unfocused, scrambling for somewhere to land. Outside, she finally snapped. "You ruined me," she hissed. "Do you have any idea what this does to my reputation?" I took a breath. "You did that yourself." She scoffed. "You always play the victim." "No," I said quietly. "I stopped playing." Her eyes filled with something close to tears. Rage, humiliation, fear. "You think you're better than me now?" she demanded. I considered the question. "No," I said honestly. "I think I'm finally not beneath you." She stared at me like I'd slapped her. That night, my phone exploded. Messages from my parents, missed calls, voicemails layered with confusion, accusation, disbelief. "How could you embarrass your sister like that? Why didn't you tell us? You could have prevented this." I listened to them all. Then I turned my phone off. Daniel and I sat on the couch at home, the city lights glowing softly through the windows. "Are you okay?" he asked. I nodded. "I think I've been waiting my whole life for that moment." He kissed my forehead. "You were incredible." I leaned into him, feeling something settle inside me. The next day, Ava posted a vague message online about toxic family and betrayal from those closest to you. People commented supportively. She didn't name me. She didn't have to. At a family dinner a week later, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken things. Ava didn't look at me. My mother finally broke. "Why didn't you tell us you were married?" I met her eyes. "Because every time I shared something good, it became something to diminish." My father sighed. "You could have handled this differently." "Could I?" I asked. "Or would the outcome have just been quieter and more comfortable for everyone else?" No one answered. Ava stood abruptly. "I'm done being punished for your insecurity." I looked at her calmly. You weren't punished. You were revealed. She stormed out, and for the first time, I didn't chase her. Weeks passed, then months. Ava lost the deal, not just with Daniel's company, but with others who'd heard, quietly, about how she treated people she assumed were beneath her. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I just lived. And in that living, something extraordinary happened. I stopped bracing myself. I stopped shrinking at family gatherings. I stopped apologizing for taking up space. But the story wasn't finished yet, because Ava hadn't said her last word, and when she finally did, she said it in front of everyone, at a moment she thought would restore her power. She was wrong. Very, very wrong. Ava didn't disappear quietly. She couldn't. People like my sister don't fade out. They regroup, they reframe, they rewrite the story until they're once again the misunderstood hero instead of the exposed villain. At first, it was subtle. She stopped showing up to family dinners, stopped answering my parents' calls as often. When she did respond, it was with carefully chosen words. I just need space. I'm protecting my mental health. I was blindsided. The narrative was already forming. My mother predictably absorbed it whole. She's been so hurt, she told me one afternoon over the phone. She feels betrayed. I held the phone away from my ear for a moment and breathed. By what? I asked calmly. The truth? My mother sighed. You didn't have to let her walk into that meeting like that. I closed my eyes. I'd known this was coming. You're right, I didn't have to, but she didn't have to spend years telling me I was nothing either. Silence. She was joking, my mother said weakly. She was defining me, I replied, and you let her. That conversation ended without resolution, like most of them always had. But Ava wasn't done. 3 weeks later, she announced her engagement.
It came out of nowhere. A flashy social media post, ring front and center, a long caption about choosing love after betrayal. The comments flooded in. Congratulations! You deserve happiness. So glad you found someone who sees your worth. My mother called me immediately. Did you see the news? She asked breathlessly. Yes, I said. I saw. She wants to introduce him to the family, my mother continued, at the engagement dinner next month. I already knew where this was going. And? I prompted. And she asked if you'd come. I smiled faintly. Of course she did. Daniel was standing nearby, tying his shoes for work. He glanced up at me, reading my expression easily. She's planning something, he mouthed. I nodded. I'll be there, I told my mother. Daniel, too. There was a pause. She didn't mention your husband. She wouldn't, I said, but he'll be there. The dinner was held at an upscale restaurant Ava loved, the kind with low lighting, white tablecloths, and prices that demanded reverence. She arrived late, of course. She always did, liked to make an entrance. Her fiancé, Mark, followed a step behind her, tall, polished, slightly nervous. He looked like someone who had learned how to perform confidence, but hadn't grown into it yet. Ava glowed, not with happiness, but with vindication. She hugged my parents dramatically. Then her eyes landed on me. Well, she said, lips curling into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You made it. I said I would. Her gaze flicked to Daniel. And this must be my husband, I said smoothly. Her smile tightened. Right, of course. Dinner began with forced pleasantries. Ava dominated the conversation, weaving her engagement story into every topic, subtly positioning herself as the triumphant one who had moved on. Then she stood. I just want to say something, she announced, tapping her glass. The table quieted. My stomach didn't drop. It steadied. I've learned a lot recently about trust, about betrayal, about how sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who want to see you fail. My mother nodded solemnly. Ava's eyes flicked to me.
But I've chosen grace." I almost laughed. She continued, "I've chosen not to dwell on bitterness, to focus on my future." Mark squeezed her hand, smiling uncertainly. "I'm proud of myself for rising above negativity." She raised her glass. "To new beginnings." Everyone clinked glasses. Then she looked directly at me. "And to those who thought they were better than me, I hope you're happy with the lies you live."
The room went still. Every eye turned to me. Daniel didn't move, didn't interrupt, didn't rescue me. He trusted me. I set my glass down slowly. "Ava," I said, my voice calm, carrying just enough to cut through the tension. "If you're going to talk about me, at least be honest." Her brows shot up. "I didn't name you." "You didn't have to," I replied. She crossed her arms. "This is exactly what I mean. You always make everything about you." I smiled. "Funny, I was thinking the same thing." My father cleared his throat. "Maybe this isn't the time." "It is," Ava snapped. "I'm done being quiet." I nodded. "Me too." She laughed sharply. "You really think marrying rich makes you superior?" Mark stiffened beside her. Daniel shifted slightly but stayed silent. "This isn't about money," I said. "It's about respect, something you've never given me." She scoffed. "You've always been jealous of me." I leaned forward. "No, I was exhausted by you." A ripple of discomfort moved through the table. "Ava," my mother warned softly, but Ava was already spiraling. "You think you've won," she said bitterly. "You think everyone sees you as the victim now." I shook my head. "No, I don't need to be a victim anymore." She stared at me. "Then what do you want?" The answer came easily. "I want you to stop pretending I was nothing just so you could feel like something." Silence. Mark looked between us, confusion dawning. "Ava, what is she talking about?" Ava froze. I stood. "For years," I said, my voice steady, "you told me no one would ever want me, that I was unlovable, unsuccessful, invisible." Ava shook her head. "You're exaggerating." I turned to Mark. "She said it at family dinners, at holidays, in front of our parents." My mother looked down. My father said nothing. Daniel finally spoke. "I heard it," he said quietly. Ava spun on him. "Of course you'd say that." Daniel met her gaze. "You said it the night before your pitch. You'll never find anyone." Mark's expression changed. "Ava, did you say that?" She opened her mouth, closed it. "It was a joke. You know how siblings tease." Mark didn't smile. "And when you mocked her career," Daniel added, "or called her worthless?" Ava's voice rose. "Why are you doing this to me?" I answered softly, "Because you're doing it again." She looked around, realizing, too late, that the room was no longer on her side. "I'm not the villain here," she said desperately. "I've worked hard for everything I have." "So have I," I replied. "I just didn't announce it." Mark stood abruptly. "I need air." He walked away. Ava watched him go, panic flashing across her face. "You've ruined my engagement," she whispered. I shook my head. "No, I told the truth. If that ruins it, that's not on me." She looked at my parents. "Are you just going to sit there?" My mother hesitated, then spoke quietly. "Ava, maybe you owe your sister an apology." Ava stared at her like she'd been slapped. An apology. The word hung between us, heavy, unfamiliar. She laughed bitterly. "Unbelievable." She grabbed her purse and stormed out after Mark. The dinner ended shortly after. In the parking lot, my mother touched my arm. "I didn't realize it was that bad." I met her eyes. "I tried to tell you." She nodded slowly. Daniel and I drove home in silence. Not tense, reflective. Daniel said finally, "She wanted to reclaim control."
Yes, I replied, and she thought humiliating me would do it. He reached for my hand. You were incredible. I exhaled, feeling something loosen inside me. That night, Ava sent me a message, long, angry, accusatory. I didn't respond, because for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I owed her anything. But the story still wasn't over, because when someone loses power they never should have had, they don't always go quietly. And Ava was about to make one final, desperate move, one that would change everything. Ava didn't apologize. Not that night, not the next morning, not the day after. Instead, she did what she had always done when control slipped through her fingers. She escalated. 2 days after the engagement dinner, my phone started buzzing nonstop. Messages from distant relatives I barely spoke to, old friends from childhood, even a former coworker. At first, they were vague. "Hey, are you okay? I heard something strange and wanted to check in. Can we talk?" By noon, I understood why. Ava had started telling her version of the story. In it, she was the victim of a calculated betrayal, a sister who had secretly married a powerful man and deliberately orchestrated her public humiliation out of jealousy, a woman who had waited years to get revenge. She didn't call me evil, she didn't need to, she implied it. She cried to anyone who would listen, said she felt set up, said I had always resented her success, said Daniel had used his position to destroy her career because I was insecure. The irony would have been funny if it hadn't been so familiar. This time, though, something was different.
People didn't rush to defend her the way they used to. Some listened politely, some nodded, but many asked questions. Inconsistencies surfaced. Why had she never mentioned my marriage before? Why had she spoken so poorly about me for years if I was truly harmless? Why did multiple people remember her mocking me openly? And then she made her mistake. Ava emailed Daniel, not privately. She copied half the board. In the message, she accused him of sabotaging her out of personal bias and demanded a formal explanation before she pursued other avenues. Daniel read it once, then he forwarded it to legal, and to HR, and to the board chair, along with documentation, emails, meeting transcripts, witness statements, and one particularly damning attachment, her own proposal notes, where she referred to non-essential staff as expendable and dismissed entire departments as replaceable. Within 48 hours, Ava was blacklisted from the firm, not because she was my sister, because she was unprofessional, reckless, and arrogant enough to threaten the wrong people. Word spread quietly, as it always does at that level. Firms stopped returning her calls, recruiters went cold, her LinkedIn activity slowed to a trickle. And then, Mark left. Not dramatically, not with shouting or slammed doors. He simply packed his things and told her he needed distance from the chaos. Later, through mutual acquaintances, I learned he'd said something that stuck with me. I don't know who she is when she doesn't feel superior. That sentence haunted her. It liberated me. A week later, Ava showed up at my door, unannounced. I almost didn't answer, but something told me this was the last chapter. She looked different, smaller somehow, not physically, but energetically. Like someone who had spent her entire life standing on other people and suddenly found herself on level ground. "I just want to talk," she said. I stepped aside. She sat on the couch, hands clasped tightly, eyes darting around like she expected judgment to jump out from the walls. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said. I leaned against the counter. "You always mean for things to go exactly where they go." She flinched. "They're saying I'm difficult," bitterly, "that I burn bridges." I didn't respond.
You could fix this, she said quietly. Daniel could make a call, explain.
I finally met her eyes. No, I said. She looked stunned. You owe me. I shook my head. I survived you. That's not the same thing. Tears welled in her eyes, but they didn't move me. For the first time, I could see her clearly. Not powerful, not impressive, just deeply afraid of being ordinary. I don't understand how you did this, she whispered. You were always so small. I smiled, not cruelly, not triumphantly. Because I stopped trying to be big in your shadow, I said. I grew where you weren't looking. She laughed softly, hollow. You think you're better than me now. I walked to the door and opened it. I think I'm free, I said, and you're still fighting ghosts. She stood slowly. At the door, she hesitated. You really won't help me? I looked at her one last time. I already did, I said, by not becoming you. She left without another word. After that, the noise died down, the rumors faded, the messages stopped, the family tension softened into something manageable. My parents changed, slowly, awkwardly, not perfectly, but enough. They started asking me questions, real ones, about my work, about my marriage, about my life. My mother admitted one evening, voice barely above a whisper, "We should have protected you more." I nodded. Yes, you should have. And we let that truth exist without cushioning it. Daniel and I moved into a new place not long after, a home that felt like ours, not borrowed, not defended. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who sat at family tables swallowing insults, the one who smiled to keep the peace, the one who believed love had to hurt to count. I wished I could reach back and tell her one thing. They were wrong. Not about success, not about worth, not about love. They were wrong about you being unchosen, because you didn't need to be picked. You needed to choose yourself. My sister once said, "You'll never find anyone." She believed love was leverage, that power meant being desired more than others. She never understood that real love doesn't elevate you above people. It stands beside you. My husband didn't rescue me. He recognized me. And in the end, that made all the difference. Ava lost the deal she thought would define her. I gained a life I never have to defend. And the quiet that followed, that wasn't emptiness. That was peace. Finally, fully mine.